Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about going back to school later on in life. I have Jonathan Gonzalez on the show today, and he's going to share his experience with going back to school. Get you something to drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Good morning, Jonathan. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you are very welcome. So I do thank you for just allowing me to interview you and sharing your story about what it's like going back to school later on in life. Why don't we first just start off with you introducing yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So like I said, or like you said, my name is Jonathan Gonzalez. I grew up in San Francisco,
Oh,
um, and I moved around a bit following that. When I was about 17, moved down to Santa Cruz. Then I moved to back to San Francisco. I moved to San Anselmo, back to San Francisco, to Alameda,
wow.
back to San Francisco. And just this past January, I moved up to Grass Valley,
Oh,
which
wow.
I hadn't really known about it prior to me moving up here, but it's kind of on the way to Lake Tahoe. It's in the foothills of the Sierras, and it's been pretty nice. So I went from the big city to this rural environment, which I've been liking it so far.
Okay, good. So what is that like for you coming from the Bay Area? You're around a lot of water, you're around a Delta breeze, and then you just come and move to Grass Valley, which is somewhat a different area. You're more into like the foothills of the mountains and just it's a different feel. So what was that like for you?
It took some adjusting because when I grew up, where I was in San Francisco, I was about maybe like half a mile from the beach. Um,
Wow.
so I would spend a lot of time over by the ocean and everything like that. But it's if I wanted to live anywhere, it'd be either by the ocean or in the mountains.
Okay, wow.
It's nice up here. It's quiet. It's peaceful. Less stress.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been acclimating it to it pretty good so far.
Nice. It's interesting
Yeah.
because I'm a city bro. I'm from born and raised in Chicago. Before I moved to California, I had never been like in the hills or the mountains, nothing like that. And as a matter of fact, I never really went to the beach, although we do have um, some beaches up in that area, but I just never really the way I grew up with my family, they never really took, me to beaches and lakes and things like that. So moving here, I remember going to Fairfield and I started to have a little bit of anxiety just going to Fairfield and, moving on to like some of the other areas, going to the Bay Area. And I was just telling one of my friends at the time, like, oh, I was in the mountains. And he was like, you was not in the mountains, Jay. That's not the mountains. Go to Reno and go to Lake Tahoe, then you would be in the mountains and stuff. But I didn't know because I wasn't used to, this type of area. And believe it or not, I had caught anxiety. I was fearful just traveling to that Fairfield area or going like to Oakland, just the Bay Area in general. It was just crazy how my body just started to just have some sort of anxiety because it wasn't familiar with the area. And you know, the hills are very small going that way. And now I know it's not the mountains, obviously, but I just thought that was interesting. But I think I got kind of used to that area now. So
Yeah. No, I mean, even in San Francisco, when I moved up here, I would go back down every once in a while. And since I've been living up here a little bit, I'd go back down and start to get a little anxious or something like that. It's just the pace of life is a lot different in more of the
yeah,
urban setting. And, even my neighbors up here, they're all very calm and kind of very chilled out and everything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's a different kind of like vibe.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, San Francisco is more, I think, like fast-paced area,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know, you got to be on the go, get to where you're
Yeah.
going, doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
In the area you talk about is a little bit laid back and a
Yeah.
little bit smaller and things
hmm
like that. Not as many people in the area you in
Yeah.
to San Francisco.
hmm Yeah.
Um, so what else are you doing? Are you are currently going back to school? Let's talk a little bit about that.
hmm
Um, Before we dive into what you're actually doing now, what school did you get your undergraduate degree from?
So I got my undergraduate degree from Cal Berkeley,
Okay, nice.
but I had transferred there. I had actually gone to three different community colleges before I made my way over to Berkeley.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a while. It was a long trip, but yeah, I did make it, and I did graduate in 2017 with the bachelor's of social welfare.
Okay, social welfare. So
hmm
what made you want to major in that particular studies major?
I knew I wanted to work with people, and I actually was planning on transferring from my community college to the psychology department. Um, but my college counselor at the time said, "You know what? It's kind of tough to get into this department at Berkeley. Um, you need calculus, which I
Yeah.
hadn't taken." Um, he said, "Well, if you can transfer to this social welfare department, because at the time I had already thought maybe I'll get my MSW, my Master's of Social Work.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, I'll transfer over to the social welfare department where I don't need calculus. And I ended up getting in, so I stuck with
Nice.
that.
Nice.
Mhm.
So you went to community college before you went to university. Was that because you were trying to get your general electives out of the way, or you just felt that that would be more beneficial for you opposed to just jumping into a university?
Yeah, when I started, well, the first community college I went to was just because I had, it didn't work out so good. It was when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
I was about 18 when I went to my first community college, and I didn't do that great. Uh,
hmm
and then I took some time off. And then, uh, let's see, I think it was 2014 comes around, and I had been working for a while. And I wanted to go back to school. So it worked out a little bit better because I started just with one class here and there.
Right.
And then I upped it to like two classes.
Yeah.
But it was also a lot cheaper, which
Yeah.
was nice. Uh,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
Yeah, so there were a lot of reasons going to community college, but it's just a lot easier for somebody that's a little bit older just to kind of like put your foot in and see how you like it, take one class. It's not a huge commitment just to sign up for one class. So I did that. I liked it and I just kept going.
Oh, nice. Well, I
Yeah.
think that was pretty smart to just test the water to see how it will work out for you, see if it was,
Yeah.
you know, coordinate with your schedule, your working schedule, and things like that. Because I
Yeah.
know some people just jump into it, especially if they haven't been to school in a while, and it just don't work out. So I think just easing your way into the process
Yeah.
definitely worked out for you.
hmm
Um, so you graduated, you know, with your bachelor's, and what did you do after that? Did you immediately start working in a specific field? Like, what did you go from there?
I actually took a little bit of a break after I got my bachelor's. Um, I took a little bit of a break, just kind of like uh, played some music. I hung out with friends. I had been working since I was like 17 or so, and then my bachelor's got completed when I was 27.
Hmm.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to take it easy for a little bit. And then I did odd jobs here and there, but then COVID started um,
Hmm.
after a little while, and that kind of put a damper on work stuff.
Yeah.
But I did get one of my next job was actually during COVID.
Mm.
I worked at a hotel turned homeless shelter for families in San Francisco, run by an organization called Catholic Charities.
Okay.
Um, so I did that for a little while, um, and then that wrapped up. And then I did odd jobs here and there, and eventually um, signed up to do this master's program that I'm in now.
Okay. So what led you to actually pursue a graduate degree?
I think that was the plan all along.
Yeah.
When I decided to go back to school about almost 10 years ago now,
Okay.
uh, yeah, I did want to eventually. I think I had my eye on a master's of social work from that time, just because it was, it's a respected degree that you can actually get a licensure and do clinical work with. Um, and it's a little bit more freedom than if you have, say, like a MFT,
Hmm.
which is pretty strictly just for therapy. Whereas
Uh-huh.
MSW, you could do therapy, but you could also do a whole lot of other things too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. With a master's in social work is definitely a good degree, especially if you go and get licensed to become a licensed clinical social worker.
Yeah.
You could open up your own field, I mean your own bit practice, uh,
Yeah.
become a therapist. I mean, you can do a lot. And it definitely exposes you to a lot of different channels
Hmm.
in that particular area opposed to MFT. You kind of just
Yeah.
have to stick to that.
Hmm.
So, well, what was you doing, Jonathan, before you actually enrolled in your master's program? What type of work were you doing?
So the uh, the longest job that I had prior to enrolling in school, and I continued to uh, work this job for the first I think 3 years when I was in school. I was a computer draftsman for a
Mm.
land surveying company.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so actually, when my grandpa, when he came to San Francisco back in the 60s, he started up this land surveying company. And he had to be pretty prominent within San Francisco because it was so much building at that time, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, 80s, all the way up until the 90s and the 2000s. And with the density of all the buildings and the prices of rent and real estate at that time, he did pretty well. So my uncle actually still owns a business, but I had been working as a computer draftsman, drawing up maps of land surveys for a
Wow.
while, which was a good job. It pays good. The guys in the field are in the union, the operating
Yeah.
engineers, but since I was in the office, I wasn't in the union. But good benefits, good everything like that. But I knew after maybe 5 or 6 years, it would be fun to do something else. I was getting a little bored, and I thought, okay, after 5 years, if I'm getting bored, after 30 years, I'm going to be
Yeah.
pretty bored. So.
Yeah. Did you feel like you wanted to have more meaning to what you were doing in terms of career wise? Did you feel like you wanted to make a difference when it comes to dealing with people or human services and
Yeah.
stuff like that?
Yeah, that's pretty much on the spot.
Okay.
Um, because when I was working in San Francisco, downtown, uh, and it's San Francisco's funny because you could. be in one block, and it's very nice condo buildings that are $1 million and this and that. And then you go to the next block, and there's homeless camps and um, people on the street and stuff like that. So when I was working, I was seeing that kind of stuff every day.
Yeah.
Then I was going to the office and doing condo plans for like $1 million condos and things like that.
Wow.
It didn't really match up with what I wanted to kind of produce or what I wanted to contribute to. Um, so after a while, I was like, you know what, I'd rather do something a little bit different.
Wow. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people, I'm sure you was making a lot of money. You know, a lot of people, it's hard for them to give up a career like that, make a lot of money and go into social work. You know,
Yeah.
as you know, there's a a somewhat big um financial difference between the two
Hmm.
fields. You
Oh,
know,
for sure. Yeah.
so but yeah, you have to follow your passion and things like that. Let me ask you another question. Do
Mhm.
you feel like you were um and maybe you said this and maybe I just missed it, but do you feel like you was getting bored doing what you was doing and felt like there was really like, wasn't making a difference for lack of better
Mhm.
terms?
Yeah. Oh, for
Okay.
sure. Uh, I did eventually know, I wanted to work with people. And
Okay.
like I said, when I would walk to work, there's some folks that I would see. Uh, they weren't homeless, but they lived in SROs and spent a lot of time on the street selling newspaper street sheets kind of things. It was like a nonprofit that they could make money
Yeah.
selling newspaper. And I would talk to them, and I enjoyed it a lot. Just kind of like hanging out and talking to them and getting the vibe of what's going on the street and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to be more uh, kind of contributing to that side of the culture.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I have a friend, she's older and she worked, well I'll just say she was doing very well for herself and still is. And I think she was like 36 or 35 at the time. And
Mhm.
she realized that she was making a ton of money and traveling around the world doing what she was doing, but she was telling me that it wasn't fulfilling for her.
Mhm.
And so she also went back and got a graduate degree in social work because
Yeah.
she wanted to work with people. And so now she's a licensed clinical social worker and she works actually in the prison system as a therapist. And but she loves it though. She said, no, she's not fearful, she's not scared. She absolutely loves what she does, opposed to her previous job, she would always communicate with me that she feels empty. She feels like she has no purpose. It's just flying everywhere, staying in hotels, doing what she's doing, making it, money for this company. And she just felt like it wasn't doing anything for her. And she actually started to, believe it or not, get depressed mentally. And
Mhm.
she was saying to me that, and in the beginning of it, in the beginning of the start of her depression, she did not know why she was depressed. She didn't understand why she was depressed until she started going to see a therapist. And then
Mhm.
as they start to unpack, different things and trauma and what was going on in her current life, she learned that her depression was coming from her not being fulfilled in a job that she was doing. Although she was making a lot of money, she wasn't where she wanted to be in terms of career wise, because she always had a desire to pour into people's lives and help people and stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
mean, I think there's a lot of parallels with that. The previous job I had was a really good job, and the guy that taught me that I was an apprentice under, he was hired by my grandfather like 35 years ago,
wow.
and he had been doing that, and he enjoyed it, and I think it was a perfect fit for him. But for me, it wasn't quite the best fit. I think
Okay.
it wasn't quite what I really wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say that too, Jonathan, because a lot of times people come from families that, say, for example, if Some families may, be in a career of in the medical field, doctors and nurses and gynecologists, whatever. And a lot of times they want their sons and granddaughters and grandsons to follow that same path.
Yeah.
And here it is, your grandfather, was working in this particular field. And then he taught this guy, and then the same guy ended up teaching you that was work for your grandfather, but you chose to go a different route.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually never met my grandfather. He
Oh,
passed away in the 80s,
yeah.
before I was born. But still, um, yeah, that there's still a strong legacy in San Francisco and with this business and everything like that. But even talking to my grandmother, who I just told you, she just turned 100 this past month in
Wow.
October. Um,
Wow.
so I could tell if he was around, I think he would be pretty supportive of everything that I'm doing now. Because I know
Yeah.
later on in his life, um, he kind of moved away from work, and started trying to spend more time with family and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So did the guy that you did apprenticeship with, did he share stories with you about your grandfather, what type of person he was, and different
Yeah,
things like that?
yeah,
Nice.
a little bit, a little bit. Some
Yeah.
other people at the company. It was nice because it was a small place and there's a lot of folks that had been working there for 20, 30, 40 years.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Now let's move on to you actually get into your graduate program. When you applied, did you was there any nervousness or anxiousness on your behalf or any doubt? How was that experience for you actually applying for your graduate classes?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always a little bit like, oh no, am I going to get in? Am I not going to get in? And I actually had applied to, this was not the first MSW program I applied to.
Okay.
Right after I got out of um, uh, my bachelor's degree, I applied to San Francisco State
Okay.
for their MSW program, which I found out is pretty tough to get into.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a ton of experience. I got good grades and everything like that. And had good recommendations, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience in the field. And I had just gotten out of my bachelor's program. And I think they want you to, have wait a little bit, get some experience.
Yeah.
So then when I did apply, I don't know if I mentioned, but the program I'm at is Louisiana State University.
Hmm.
So it's an online program. So eventually I got all my ducks in a row and applied, and a little bit nervous, but it, it it worked out pretty good. I was excited about going.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So now that you're in school taking class, now how long have you been in school for social work?
So you mean just this master's program or the
Yeah.
whole
No, yeah, the master's program. Like how long have you
yeah.
been in your master's program, and how long do you have to go before you actually get your degree?
So I've been in this program since this past March.
Okay.
And the I'll be in this program. It's a 2-year program. So
Okay.
in March of 2025 is when I should be finishing up.
Okay, nice. So how is it? How is it going back to school, getting a master's degree later on in life, not being in your late teens and your early 20s? How's that for you?
I prefer it as opposed to going to school uh, when I was in my late teens and early
Yeah.
20s, because that at that time that was definitely not my focus in life,
Yeah.
school and academics and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, which is kind of shows how during that time I did not do very good.
Yeah.
And then when I did go back eventually, when I was 24, I did community college, which there's a big mix of all kinds of people at community college, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Uh, I was comfortable in that environment because there was always some older people, even older than me at the time. There were
Yeah.
people in their 50s and 60s going to classes. So that made me feel a little bit more comfortable. And then when I eventually did get to my 4-year school at Berkeley, then I did get some of that kind of feeling a little bit out of place.
Yeah.
Uh, because at that school, it was mostly people that were in their teens and late or early 20s.
Yeah.
And they were having the whole experience of living on campus and
Yeah.
having the whole college life thing, which I had never really experienced.
Yeah.
Um, so when I was at Berkeley, I kind of missed the community colleges.
Okay.
Uh,
Interesting. Yeah.
but I always found somebody else that was a little bit older.
Yeah.
In each class that I took, there was always at least one person that was a little bit older, so I would kind of link up with them and
Yeah.
do that. But now that I'm in the master's program, there are a lot of folks that are older, and it's I feel a little bit more comfortable in that setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the work overwhelming or is it, yeah, I can do it? Like, do you find yourself being stressed trying to meet certain deadlines?
At this time, it's not too bad,
Okay.
and I think that's because of the environment that I'm in.
Okay.
Uh, Whereas prior to this, when I was getting my bachelor's, I was working, I was living in the city, and I was commuting to school and back. I was living in San Francisco and commuting, taking BART every day to Berkeley,
Okay.
uh, and that was tougher than it is now. This is an online program, so there's a little bit more comfort being able to do the work at home and not having to make my way all the way over to classes and sit in and everything like that. So it makes it a little bit easier with getting deadlines right, a little bit easier to schedule everything right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it does. There are benefits to um, taking an online course as opposed to actually having to go there. I mean, you're
Yeah,
definitely saving a lot of time.
yeah,
You're definitely saving a lot of resources. If you have to drive there, you don't, you're saving on gas and different things like that.
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because I personally think that I would, and it just would depends, but I think I personally would have loved to went in an actual classroom because I like just the whole field of being around a diverse group of people, whether it's race, age, specific beliefs, and things like that. I like that type of environment. But you got to do what works best for you, for lack of better terms.
yeah. I do kind of miss being in that classroom environment sometimes. Um, but we are doing quite a few group projects where on a weekly basis we'll have group meetings and everybody will get together on a Zoom call and kind of like this and go over things. So I do get to have that kind of connection to other students too, which is nice.
That's awesome. Awesome. And so are you able to like, meet up with your professor online, different things like that, or,
Yeah.
like office hours?
Yeah, they make themselves pretty available. They're pretty quick with if I have a question or something like that, I'll email them. They're pretty quick with an answer, and they're pretty thorough too. So they always make themselves really available, which
Okay,
is
that's awesome.
yeah.
So so we talked about the pros to going to school online. What are like the cons?
I think it's just kind of like a different um, mentality and how I learn. I do miss having that hands-on
Yeah.
uh, kind of thing and being in the environment of campus. Um, Being at a big campus, it's kind of cool walking around, going, seeing all the different buildings and everything like that, and really being like immersed in the environment. But yeah, I mean, in this setting, I have a little bit more control over what my environment is,
Yes.
which I really do like. Uh, I could make my setting uh, whatever I need it to be.
Yeah. I know someone who went and got a master's degree in well online, and they had a quite interesting experience. They felt like the professors were more stern, more rigorous in terms of the work, in terms of meeting deadlines and stuff like that. This one particular individual experienced that an assignment was to be turned in at, I think I want to say 12 midnight. They turned it in like at 12:01, 1 minute after the deadline, and this individual grade was dropped. Like instead of getting an A,
Mm.
they their grade was dropped to a B because they was 1 minute late. And do you feel, well, let me say this. Have you experienced something like that? Or do you feel like the professors that you have so far interacted with in terms of your classes, do you feel like they're like really, strict and stern, or do you feel like it would just, it's like the regular professor, like being in an actual classroom?
I think it depends on the specific professor,
Yeah.
because I have had professors where, uh, I could tell straight from the beginning of the class they're going to be strict.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to have to keep up with everything with that professor.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've had professors. I know for this, I'm taking a class right now in group practice. So running groups and things like that. And
Yeah.
I had the same professor in the last class for individual practice. And while she is, uh, you know, very she expects a lot of the students,
Yeah.
uh, uh, and she gives a lot of assignments and a lot of readings and things like that. But if you communicate with her, she's very lenient.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
during the first part, like the first week of this class, I had a lot of stuff going on, and I just kind of missed that there was a couple of assignments that were due within the first couple of days of class, which
Yeah.
isn't super typical.
Yeah.
So I just emailed her and said, "Hey, I got this going on." Right away as soon as I saw that it was due, I said, "Oh, I got this going on," and she was fine with it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the professor, but in a online setting, it can be a little bit more like uh I don't want to say like mechanical, but less personal in the
Yeah.
sense that okay, this is a computer, and if you're 1 minute late, the computer says you're late.
Exactly. Yeah. And this individual too, they with another professor, it was just funny to just to just hear all this and just, know all this. But this particular individual had another professor that they got into an email war about
Yeah.
a specific paper. And because of that, the grade was dropped. And I don't know, I just to just hear these things, did try to encourage the individual, like, well, just, this is the professor, you gotta, you're not gonna win in the end,
Yeah.
period. It's just the way
Mhm.
it's gonna be.
Yeah.
And so this individual had this same professor for another class that was coming up in the following semester, and they dropped that class because they didn't want
Mhm.
to deal with that particular professor. They felt like, no, just my experience now, it's not going to work out. Have you
Yeah.
experienced anything like that? Getting into like back and forth or disagreement with a professor regarding your grade?
I have. I'm trying to think back on the specific class. I do remember there being a couple of. I do remember one specific class that I didn't kind of. I wasn't quite in line with what the professor was feeling, but it always comes back to the fact that this is the real world and this is how it's going to be. And sometimes you're not going to be working with people that you're, running on the same track with, really.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's another lesson to me. I took it, okay, well, this is a lesson because
Mm.
I've had to work with people like that in the past in like more of a professional setting, and you can't really, I mean, you could try to avoid working with them, but if you have to, you have to.
Yeah.
So with this professor, I can't remember exactly how everything happened. I ended up getting a decent grade in the class, but that was only because the first couple of assignments, I think I saw how they were grading, and I was like, okay, well, I understand what you're doing. I understand how you're grading things, and I kind of have to change how I do the assignments personally.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I had to do, is find out what they're looking for and just give them what they're looking for, really.
I think that was very wise of you to adapt that mindset because a lot of people would complain or they would just label this professor as being difficult, and the professor could very well be difficult. But I think what you did, you realized that, it's not so much about the professor, it's about me, meaning you getting through this class and realizing that, there are things about you that you have to change about yourself in order to adapt to his or her expectations to get the grade that you wanted, the grade that you deserve. And that's hard for a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
it is, and I think I personally would have took the same approach you took, because I'm like, I would have told myself, yeah, I want to pass this class. And although this professor may be doing too much, in my opinion, I still want to pass this class and get the grade that I know I can get if I, put in my all.
hmm Yeah, and I do remember with this professor, I kind of it wasn't exactly me accommodating this professor 100%. There were a couple of things that I said, I do expect a certain amount of feedback.
Yeah.
'Cause I do remember the problem wasn't that I didn't get a good grade on an assignment. It was that I didn't get a grade that I was expecting, and I didn't get any feedback for why.
Okay.
That
Wow.
was the main problem. So I said, hey, if you're going to give me a grade like this, you need to give me feedback.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think she did agree with that, and then eventually started being a little bit better. So I think it kind of works both ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. But once again, you being able to take the approach you did, because I mean, especially you thinking about some of these this generation being in like their late teens, early 20s, a lot of them don't have the coping skills or the maturity or wisdom to be able to take a situation like that and make it work for them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of like the difference. Think about you being in your late teens in a situation like that.
Yeah. No, I'm very glad that I waited. That was one of the big reasons that I'm happy that I, got some professional, real world work experience and real world like life experience, just understanding, okay, this is how the world works, you
Yeah.
know?
Do you feel working like at Catholic charities or doing may, you doing may let me back back. You doing other work in this field before you started school. Do you feel like that actually helped you a little bit in your classes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. Because one thing is that I was not very good at back in high school, and in my first few classes was, staying organized and having a schedule and that kind of thing. So I got that through working, in a professional environment and learning from other people how to keep things organized and kind of like stay on top of all the work.
Yeah,
Because if you don't, I mean, you could lose your job.
right.
Um, instead of just getting a, not a very good grade in a class, it's kind of a different level of consequences, I
Right.
guess. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. And then on top of that was the fact that when I got older, especially now at this time when, master's programs, it's not as many scholarships or anything like that. Because when I was in bachelor's, I was able to get, financial aid more.
Yeah.
Um, but even then, I'm paying for the classes.
Yeah.
Uh, and if I don't do good in a class and I fail, I got to pay more money and take the class again.
Yeah.
So that's more motivation just to kind of like stay on top of everything.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Now, I know when some people go and get a graduate degree, they are required to do like an internship or some type of big project. Are you required to do like an internship or like a project?
Yeah. So a big portion of every MSW program is internship.
Right.
And I think it's just about 1,000 hours of internship throughout the 2 years
Okay.
that you have to do. So yeah, um, that is a big portion. So that's what I'm working on now.
Okay. And so how do you like your internship while you're going to school?
It's pretty great. I enjoy being in classes and things like that, and I enjoy um, reading about all kinds of social work topics. But
Mm.
that doesn't uh, give you real world experience of
Yeah.
working face to face with clients,
Yeah.
because that's a completely different skill than reading about what methods you need to use with people or reading about you know different research topics, but like seeing it firsthand, that's um, I think that's a whole nother level of whole nother type of experience. And yeah, so I'm appreciating that right now.
Oh, that's awesome. So, when a person do an internship when they're getting, uh, graduate degree when it's required, is it up to the school to find that internship for the student, or is it up to the student to find their own internship?
So we work with field coordinators who help
Okay.
us to find an internship. Um, so for myself, since I was pretty far away from the actual campus location, since it's distance learning, then it was more on the student to
Okay.
find the internship, and then the field coordinator will, kind of help out, make calls, make suggestions.
Okay.
But most of the work is on the student to find the internship.
Okay.
Mhm.
And like in terms of like, because earlier you mentioned that you have to have 1,000 hours. Is that 1,000 hours per semester or 1,000 hours, scattered throughout your 2 year term as a student?
It's 1,000 hours throughout the 2 years.
Okay.
So there's actually two internships. The first year you're supposed to do a generalized internship,
Okay.
and then the second year is a specialized internship. And I think if uh, sometimes people do two separate internships at two separate companies.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm hoping to do the same one at the same company because there's not a lot of um, organizations. If I was in San Francisco or something, maybe I'd be able to
Yeah.
find two separate internships. But up here, it's a little bit more sparse as far as social service organizations. So I'd rather just stick with the same one. But it is 500, about 500 hours for the first one, and then 500 hours for the second one in the second year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much when you do an internship, it's just you're working, you're doing actual work. So how's that for you going to school and getting up and just doing an internship? Is that a little bit stressful, a little bit, or because sometimes sometimes it's hard for people to go to work and
Mhm.
go to school full time. I
Yeah.
mean, it just depends on how you operate. You got your priorities together. Some people got kids, some people married, so whatever it may be. But how is that working for you?
It's working okay for me. It did take some adjusting,
Okay.
because I hadn't been working for a while. I was doing a little bit of odd jobs when I was living in San Francisco prior to moving up here this past January and starting school. But still, I wasn't doing a ton of work. I didn't have a ton of expenses too, which was
Hmm.
nice. Um,
Yeah.
so I was in a situation where I didn't have, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have
Yeah.
kids quite yet.
Yeah.
So I don't have a ton of responsibilities. But even then, it was kind of a big adjustment to um, start going to work again, waking up, making a commute, and spending this amount of time uh, at work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so that was, if I had to change one thing about even about graduate school, especially MSW programs, it's that uh, if uh, if I did have a mortgage and kids, and I know people in the same program do have those things,
Oh,
and
wow.
they are doing an internship in school, but I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I'd be able to kind of keep my stress levels down enough to be able to work through all that kind of stuff. Because most of the internships are unpaid. So, if you do have a mortgage and kids and things like that, you're going to have to work like a 40-hour job on top of 20 hours of internship on top of 20 hours of school. So it's a lot for
Yeah.
some people.
And think about you having to be, uh, you know, pretty much stay in your role as a parent or as a spouse too.
Yeah.
Your spouse or your children may have specific needs that need your attention. And it
Mhm.
could be very, 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 very stressful, super stressful, in
Yeah.
fact. So
Yeah.
I've known people who have went back to school later on in life after they, obtain different responsibilities in terms of like having kids and getting married. Some of them got through, some of them had to scale back, and just take one class here and there until they
Mhm.
work their way up. But it just depends. And I think you're very fortunate too because you don't have a lot of those responsibilities
Mhm.
and you don't have a lot of debt, so you can, you know, pretty much go to school and not have to worry about a lot of things that other people have to worry about.
No, yeah, I'm very grateful that I'm in the position where I don't have, I have some responsibilities here because
Yeah.
living out in like a rural environment, there's a lot more that you got to do around the house,
Yeah.
in terms of like making, it gets cold in the winter time, so you got to
Oh,
have enough
yeah.
wood, you got to have enough, you got to make sure everything's working right.
Yeah.
But like you said, I don't think I could do it if I had to take care of kids on top of a mortgage, on top of all that kind of stuff. I would have to scale back, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, what is your plan after you graduate with your master's in social work?
So eventually, I'd like to get my hours to get a licensure.
Nice.
Um, So I know, eventually it would be nice to have an MSW. There's a lot of doors that open when you get that degree, but even more so if you get a licensure and you can do clinical work, that's a whole
Mhm.
nother level of
Yes.
opportunities. Uh,
Hmm.
but it does take a while to get there. I think it's like 3,000 hours in California.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, so that's about 2 years of working full time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so pretty much you'll be somewhat doing what you're doing now, your internship. Maybe not the
Yeah.
same duty, but in terms
Mhm.
of putting the hours.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a breakdown for licensure of what type of hours that you do, but typically it's like, you do half of it is like working face to face with clients and assessments and stuff like that, and then the other half is like maybe typing up stuff, office work, paperwork, that kind of thing.
Okay. And are you going to pursue that immediately after you graduate, or are you going to just kind of wait a while and work in the field?
Well, I think I try to do both. To slowly. I'm not trying to race to the finish and get my 3,000 hours like as quickly as possible,
Right.
but I'd like to start chipping away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Well, while continuing to work in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your goal? Do you want to become a therapist? You want to open up your own practice? You want to work in a hospital, jail? Like, what are your goals for that?
I mean, at the beginning when I was first starting out going to school, I thought, okay, get a licensure and be able to do some kind of therapy. So that's I don't want to say I have one goal, uh, but that is one of my goals is to be able to, you know, maybe I don't know if even it's going to be a private practice, but just to be able to be in a setting where I could use what I learned in my own environment uh, to be able to do what I can to help people out.
Yeah. Well, you have a very laid back and calm demeanor personality. So I think when you do step into the space, I think those who will come into your presence will definitely benefit from it because you do seem to have very good active listening skills and great communication skills and things like that. So I think you'll do really well in this field overall. So yeah, keep up the good work. Um, Jonathan, what advice will you give to somebody who is not in their late teens and their early 20s? And I'm just saying somebody who may be like 40 or 38, 39. What advice would you give to them if they want to go back to school and pursue a graduate degrees?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest piece of advice I would say to somebody that does want to go back to school is to pick something that you really enjoy and you really like learning about, um, because it makes it so much easier
Yeah,
to actually take a class that you're kind of passionate about, you enjoy, you're interested in.
yeah,
So I'd say pick something that you're interested in, and if you do, it usually comes pretty easy. Um, and then on top of that, just try to, I mean, yeah, I appreciated you saying that have a calm demeanor because throughout all this stuff, that's the other thing is to be able to stay calm and don't stress out too much. That's huge.
yeah,
Uh, just to be able to, do every little thing that I can to kind of keep my stress levels down. And, living in a quiet environment is part of it. Um,
yeah.
spending time, you got to take time for yourself too.
Mhm.
Because, I've gotten burned out in the past, just going, going, going.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I learned after getting to be like in my 30s. It's like, okay, you got to kind of take time for yourself.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Um, what about, so I know you talked about the person picking a um, you know, field they like in terms of class and things like that. How can they prepare themselves mentally to deal with the heavy, expectations that comes with going back and getting a graduate degree? How can they prepare themselves mentally for that?
I mean, it's a good question. Um, yeah, I think it's, I think it's less about, being really smart and being able to do tests well and things like that. And it's more about just kind of the other aspects of taking care of yourself so you're not stressed out, so you're in a good mental space to be taking those tests, taking care of your body so that your thinking's right, everything like that. I think that makes a big difference to being able to, get good grades and stuff like that. I think staying organized is important. And then I'd say the other aspect, it's mostly reading and writing is a lot of it, getting your writing skills up, understanding how citations work and references and doing research. It is a lot of research. So getting familiar with how to do research and how to do, citations and how to do all that kind of stuff. In terms of like, I'm pretty sure in just about every master's program, you have to do that. If it's science or if it's, you know, social work or whatever. So those kind of things, those kind of skills are really valuable.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, time goes so fast, and thank you so much for sharing your experience regarding going back to school and getting your graduate degree in social work. I really appreciate all the information you shared, and I really also hope that whoever watched this program that is thinking about going back to school and get a graduate degree, I really hope that they take into consideration your advice and your personal experience with this. So once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome, Jonathan. And that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like a DVD copy of this show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916 366 4600. Thank you.